And hello, everyone, and welcome to a very joyful conversation today that we're having. And I'm absolutely delighted and excited to welcome Dill Sanghera, our guest today. So, hello, Dill. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Konstantina. Hi, nice to meet you.
And before we start, let's not forget Shiv. Shiv is here as well.
Hello.
And maybe she'll introduce us to Dill and give some background information about her.
Okay, I will be very happy to do that. I have known Dill for a long time, but we won't go into how long. She is a member of our Central Careers team, and previously she's been a job search advisor in that team. And I'm delighted to say she is now a careers consultant. She's been qualified for a number of years, so it's great to get her onto the guidance side. So, Dill, welcome along to our our careers podcast.
Our Careers Chat podcast.
That's easy for you to say.
now.
Thank you for inviting me.
No, real pleasure to have you. And I know that you've seen hundreds and hundreds of international students. So we want to dig into how an international student or a graduate can make an outstanding CV for UK jobs.
No pressure.
No pressure. So we can start maybe with my first question, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So imagine I'm an international student coming from another country, and it is my first time I'm applying for jobs in the UK. So what are the key things that I need to include in a CV that's for the market here, please?
Okay, so that's an interesting one. As an international student from various different worlds, they have their own way of presenting a CV. So they call it resumes. CVs are resumes. So in the UK, it is the CV, and the way it is structured for the UK market, employers, recruiters tend to look for achievements. And, the focus is on the skills, the experience, and what you've achieved in your education. So those are the core information, and generally you structure it with your contact details, and the contact details is pretty much just your name and how they contact you via email or a telephone. With international students in other countries, you may see other kind of information like location where you live, marital status, your nationality and other things. You don't need to include any of that on a CV for the UK market at all. So it is just basically what your name is and how they can contact you for the next stage of the interview or the selection process.
Can I just say, if you're an international student, we've got a lot of postgrads, and we would recommend that they would put something like located in Coventry for Warwick, just to show that they're in the UK.
Yeah.
Would that be something that you would tell students to do sometimes?
Yeah, you can certainly do that. That's absolutely fine.
But not an address.
Not the full residential address. No, I wouldn't recommend that. And I think previously you would see like a term time address and a home address and things like this, but you've actually moved away from that. So you want to make the most of the space of the CV as well. So that takes up a big chunk of your CV at the top. They just need to see what your name is and how they can contact you.
And your LinkedIn.
And your LinkedIn, yes, that's a valid point. The length of the CV is another thing as well. So you've seen CVs which are like 4 or 5 pages long, and that's quite a lot. And, that's absolutely fine for a master copy of a CV. But when you're thinking about with a recruiter, there are people who are employed to look at CVs, but others it's part of their role. So ideally, it should be about a page, 2-page maximum. And it does depend on the sector as well. So yes, ideally 1 to 2 pages, and so it's more succinct.
Definitely. And would you say in some sectors you often find that different companies want different things? So consultancy is classic. You speak to one consultancy company, 1 page, only 1 page. And you go around the corner, it's careers fair, and you'll see someone else and 2 pages, because it might be more specialised, linked to engineering or tech.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give?
So I think generally what we find is that with some sectors like the finance and some consultancy, it does tend to be more 1 page. Other sectors which are more like the technical, those tend to be 2 pages, no longer than 2. Applying for like an academic role, so that's different to maybe further study. So it is actual like a professor's role, something academic. That could be longer. Okay. Yeah. But I still would say, you don't want it more than 5 pages. Sometimes I see like a 10-page, but it's not. So think about what evidence can you provide that demonstrates your achievements in terms of your education, your academic achievements, your experiences, your skills.
I mean, you could, if you were thinking of the academic route, you could have a hyperlink that takes them all your research papers and things like that. So
Yeah.
I've seen that done as well.
Yeah, I think that was my point about hyperlink, because you have the LinkedIn profile, a hyperlink to your LinkedIn profile, and you can use the LinkedIn really to list every single job if you wish,
Yes, that's
or
it.
every single achievement. However, for a CV, we're talking about tailoring the CV to a job.
Yeah.
And that links to my next question. And you mentioned the master CV. But how can a student who faces multiple applications develop a really quick way to tailor a CV without starting from scratch?
Okay, so I think touched on this, so having that master CV where you've got all the information put together, then what you tend to do is look at the job description. So thinking about tailoring, what exactly are they looking for? And then pick out those points that are most relevant. So, you're picking and choosing the experience that's most relevant. Okay, so once you chose the most relevant experience or the ones that demonstrate those transferable, then you'll be looking at the bullet points and seeing how that meets the main general requirements of what the recruiter is looking for. And you've got your LinkedIn with all the rest of that information, but it is about picking and choosing. It's a bespoke CV. Think about some recruiters, how long do they spend looking at that CV? And it could be just a couple of seconds, not that long. It's making it obvious, making it concise, so they can easily scan that and then be able to pick out and see, yes, this person is an ideal candidate, so they can then shortlist you to the next one.
Because I guess as well, sometimes when you're speaking to potential candidates, they've got a set CV and they don't realise how they can nuance. You'll talk about, this is my specific section, this is my general careers experience, but sometimes they'd fail to nuance the general stuff. So it's talking about the skills that the job you're applying to needs. And that's like a missed opportunity, I think, for a lot of students. And that's where it's a pain, but it's a pain that's worth taking on.
Yeah.
Because, we can do multiple applications, but I always say it's better to do a really strong one than 10 not so good ones, because you know where this is going. But then you speak to a recruiter and they say, no, I want tailored and I want a lot of them.
Yeah.
And you do realise they have a degree to do as well.
Yeah.
So it is getting that balance.
I think tailoring a CV could also be helpful for you to reflect on your experiences and how they align to the job at the interview stage. Because if you've done all this pre-work, preparatory work, putting everything on paper, then you will be stronger and a step ahead going at interviews. You're already there rather than coming with your stories and examples and so on.
Yeah, I mean, the other things I see is a narrative type of CV. So they kind of give me those paragraphs. You're going to try and make sure it's more concise. So researching the company, understanding the sector. So that's going to help you to sort of develop those bullet points as well, and the content that you put in the CV in terms of your education and your experiences. So so it is about kind of understanding kind of keywords and phrases and the culture of the kind of area you want to go into.
So if we're touching on the personal profile or summary section, and we might have different opinions here, as you can feel. Okay, so let's say you decide to have a personal profile or a summary in your CV. What's the best way for an international student to write a profile that immediately grabs the attention of the person reading, the recruiter, the hiring manager?
It is a topic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Kind of like Marmite, do you like it, do you not, and everything. So when I tend to see a CV, I always say, okay, you've got to think about the recruiter, Some recruiters actually like seeing that and others don't. And I always say, think about what additional documents are you providing as well. And that's going to help you to sort of think about, should you include it or not? Yeah. So what is it that they are actually looking for? And generally, it's just a small paragraph. So it's about 3 to 4, and it needs to be concise, and it needs to sort of demonstrate the motivation, where you currently are, what do you offer. Think about it when you're reading the book. You're reading that synopsis to get an idea of what's included. So it's just a little snapshot about what you got to offer, what that motivation is, and thinking about, again, coming back to that culture and the values and etc. How do you present that in paragraph 3 to 4 is maximum.
It's tricky one.
It is very, very tricky. Yeah. So, I mean, this is where I think like the additional application documents that you may include, like they may get you to fill in application questions or a cover letter where you can expand a bit more there, and you can then talk about why, demonstrate that journey to where you are. But within a CV, it's just a short little paragraph.
And I mean, it might be that space that, because you can tell I don't like, I call them career profiles.
Yes.
But you also got to think, as you've said, Dill, what space have I got for other things? Am I taking a space? And if you are sending in a cover letter, I think the other thing is you've got to tailor that cover letter, not just change the name of the company on the cover letter. You've got to really think about it. So there's a reason these things take time to be good. And I think the more practice you have, the better you become. See, Konstantina doesn't like cover letters, do you?
Depends.
Such a diplomat. Such a diplomat. So, there's 3 careers professionals around the mic.
We all have
we all have different views, and that's fine, because different recruiters have different views. And I think it comes back to that commercial awareness. What do you know? That's why you should go to a careers fair. That's why you should
do your research.
Yes.
Before you apply, absolutely.
Yes,
so
definitely.
From there, you know where you are. And you can decide, as you say, whether you have a cover letter, whether you have personal profile, but do your research.
Yes, yeah. Recruiters, I put it on the website, they give that guidance. Do they want a cover letter? What kind of key things are they looking for? So you'll find that kind of information on their website. You have a look at that first as well. That's one of my top tips. Look at the guidance, especially, if you're thinking about AI coming in.
And AI is a big part in CV writing. We haven't even come on to that. But I think there's a fear that all applications go through AI. And it's a very cheap way of doing things. But AI can be good for the recruiter, but at some point a human being is going to look at it.
Yeah.
And also, I guess my question to you is, if you were advising an international student using AI, what's the top tip you'd give them?
I think when it comes to AI, recruiters have mentioned how they've had an increase in the number of applications, and they're saying that it's leveled the playing field for some people in terms of their language skills and being more concise with their bullet points and all of this. So they found it quite difficult to sort of shortlist to the next stage. So when it comes to using AI, I think you've got to try and see it's a tool. You need to find out, where does the recruiter stand? Because, if they're visually, they've sort of stated they don't want you to use AI, then you shouldn't be using it, okay? If you are, then think about preparing first. Think about what is exactly you want it to do. What research have you done so far? What have you got already? Then think about what is it you want the AI to do, okay? So is it sort of making it more concise with the bullet points? With AI, it's more of they are providing suggestions.
Yeah.
You've got to humanize it, as you say. So whatever they do, look at it and then try and make sure that it is truly reflecting who you are. The kind of words you use, the language you use, does it truly represent that? Because with AI, they all sound the same, and you don't want that. And I think that's one of the things that recruiters are sort of continuously saying, is that they're looking at the CVs and they're all, the impression they get, and it's all the same. So you want to make sure that you, as much as you are, standing out as well. Think about what it is you want. Think about the prompts that you want to do, and there are various types of ways of putting that action in. So there's RAF, there's Clear, there's various types of ways of kind of constructing those prompts. But then have a look at the outcomes, those suggestions, and then sort of adapt them.
Because I think ultimately with the use of AI, you still want to remain authentic, because that's what recruiters say they want. They want authentic candidates. And I guess, your point is, that everybody's using it. More people maybe were getting further than they were. Yeah. But the problem is they land at the interview. Absolutely. And they just die a horrible death at the interview, because the person in front of them hasn't prepared as well as their CV is presenting them. So I think it's, as you say, is using all of those.
But I think you use AI also to analyze the job description.
Yes.
Because we're talking about keywords, key competencies. You can do this very, very quickly through AI. I remember the times when we would highlight them so I can see and they stand out for me. But wow,
do they
now
still have highlighters now?
I don't know, but I still have them actually. I still use my highlighter, I'm afraid.
Probably do on the computer, isn't it? You can highlight.
You can highlight on the computer, but that speeds the process. And then you talk about the key skills, keywords, and you include in the CV.
But I think it is the prompts, isn't it? I think getting the prompts right is the key thing. Any use of AI, because AI, you have to remember, takes everything that's on the internet, not everything that's on the internet is true or accurate. So it has hallucinations, as it calls them. And if you're not personalising that, I think that's when you're setting yourself up for a failure.
And the other thing is, many organizations now will have policy around ethical use of AI. So if you not use it ethically, then how are you going to apply for the job? How are you going to answer the interview questions? So there is mismatch of your professional values against what the organization wants. So I think it's an interesting topic that we can talk a lot about it, and I'm sure we'll revisit it very soon. But Dill, several times in the conversation you mentioned about the impact and the achievement that students or graduates need to demonstrate on their CV. How can they do that?
Wow. That's the key thing, isn't it? It's about demonstrating that kind of achievements and everything. And I think that comes out in those kind of bullet points. So it's having that impact for bullet points. So a lot of CVs I tend to see is that they're sort of describing what they did, which is great. It's fantastic. You know, we know what the task is or what they actually did in those placement, but trying to expand a bit more to demonstrating how they did it. I think that's the other thing. It's
the action.
The action. Using those action verbs, you know, plan, design, using those words that demonstrate those capabilities, but then also demonstrating the kind of tools that you've used as well. So, you know, if you used a certain program or, you know, theory or method or something like this, and then it's the impact. So if it's a measurable outcome, you can quantify it. That's fantastic. But there are different other ways of demonstrating impact. There's the indirect way to sort of saying like approximately you doubled this or like that. So think about not only directly but indirectly. Yeah. And if you can quantify it, if not, that's absolutely fine. There's other ways. Just give an average kind of way of demonstrating those.
And I guess it's also the learning.
You
know, I did this, it was a total disaster, it taught me this and this. What tools do you suggest that students use, well, graduates use? You know, I think you use CAR, STAR.
For the bullet points, you mean?
Or for anything, you know, whatever you put in, you even a bullet point, a job duty, you can CAR and STAR it.
So I tend to say TAR. TAR.
TAR. Sorry.
TAR.
So explain TAR to us.
TAR is basically, so it's STAR, but without the situation, basically. Because the situation is they've already got that job description. So you're focusing on the task, the action, and then the result.
What about the reflection?
In a CV?
In the CV?
I suppose it depends on the bullet point and what you try.
It depends on the result. You can go into the result and instead of our result, do reflection.
See, again, you've got three careers people.
Having different. I have a different framework for that.
To me, that the reflection isn't always part of the result. I've seen and spoken to enough people who'll turn around and say, well, it was a success. And more, give me more. And, you know, this is a point that I think is important for CVs, but also for interviews. So.
We're going to get I suppose this is the indirect way of showing that measurable outcome, because if it's a learning point, so you can say that through this process you received feedback to how you can develop certain things or use something. So I suppose that's the kind of reflection there. But so it's interesting.
Sometimes peer review can give it. She's shaking her head at me.
Because for me, I know, and you can really disagree here, but for me, a CV is a factual document of things that you did. All your learning and reflection is evident through the development of your jobs, how you progressed in your career, how you've taken further study and so on. But the reflection and the learning should come in the cover letter, should come in the personal statement or at the interview. I really can't see how you put, honestly, Shiv, the reflections in the CV. Or I can't do it. I can't. Just because that's my view of a CV. It's a factual, static document.
It depends on the sector as well.
I think the sector, this is very important. You see, in engineering, it would be, what did you learn from that? So you electrocuted yourself. What did you learn? Don't put your finger in.
But would I put electrocution in the CV? I know.
But it is that
interesting.
The frame,
I was thinking about the reflection in terms of like the social care, that kind of like personal kind of care. You know, if you're thinking about the education, so you might need to demonstrate that you're a reflective practitioner. So you demonstrate that through the process I learned this.
Yeah.
Like this.
And also, talking about things like intercultural awareness, being at a university where 1 in 3 students is international, it's given me another dimension to my knowledge of engineering or technology in this particular area.
But I would say in a kind of like the section of you've achieved certificates or achieved any qualifications, additional qualifications, or you've been part of something, you know, rather than sort of listing that you've achieved these additional things, you want to disclose what did you learn from that.
I think that's
and
key.
I think that's the key.
That's for the qualification.
That's not general kind of formal qualifications, but those short
can be anything.
So you attended a conference.
Yeah.
You attended a conference rather than just saying I attended a conference. You can just say got insights into X, Y, and Z.
No, I get that.
First. Because I think that's where you're showing your learning and your personal development. So I think it is. No, I know you're looking at me like
No. I'm reflecting. I'm a reflective practitioner.
Yeah.
I just have a different concept of a CV. It's very nice, and I take it in different sectors. You can vary. You can demonstrate your learning through attending conferences. Otherwise, it's just I attended there, but I sat and did something else.
Because I think if you're looking at areas like sustainability, that's a key one where talking about your development, your learning will get you further along. I just think that's the learning in sustainability makes the difference. Will probably get you shortlisted rather than saying, I understand what sustainability is. I've studied this. This is how it developed me. And that I think that the extra R or if you want to call it TAL learning, sometimes that can be helpful. It doesn't, like I said, you're never going to learn everything.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it also depends on the kind of experience or the initiative we're talking about. So if it's kind of like a work experience and everything, so I suppose if it's like an internship or, the virtual experiences, then you may want to probably say, you work shadowed or shadowed someone and this is what I found
This is what really developed me.
That's just different. I get this one because you don't have the result. You can't demonstrate the result. In my thinking is if you can't demonstrate the result, demonstrate the learning. But it's learning rather than...
But that's the impact, is the reflection is an impact, isn't it? It's that achievement. So I suppose it's that kind of...
I hear what you say. I hear what you say. But I dare to differ slightly.
That's fine.
I'm afraid we are coming to the end of our podcast episode. Dill, I'm sure we can talk to you for ages, not only on CVs, but on other topics. And may I take the opportunity to invite you for another episode soon to be our guest?
I'm more than happy to come back.
And finally, to wrap up, what is the biggest mistake you've seen on CVs?
Oh, biggest mistake. I think for me, it's about not tailoring. And it's also about, tailoring. I suppose is one thing. When they send the same CV to every position, you really need to sort of understand what is the recruiter looking for. So, when you analyse that job description, think of it like an assignment. You need to understand that criteria. If you're not demonstrating that, you're not going to get shortlisted. A clear presentation, small fonts don't. I think I would say minimum you want it as a size 10, no smaller than that. The other things, mine's just come back.
I mean, I totally get you when you're talking about not tailoring. And I have a story of, I went to, I think it was a Deloitte Careers Open Day, and they actually had a series of what do you call it? And
workshops?
No.
Series of
no, a series of different CVs that had to fail to get through. And obviously they anonymised them. That's the word I was looking for. And basically there was a lot of PwCs, EYs in there, and people who don't take the time, and it is a rush job and it is volume, they will put the wrong details down, as you've said, and put the wrong information and address it to the wrong people, and that makes such a huge faux pas.
I mean, it's one of the key skills, isn't it? It's like commercial awareness, and that needs to be presented, and that's through that.
And an eye for detail.
Attention to detail. If you can't pull one document, I can't make you do a presentation in front of key client. Yeah.
And I think the other thing, and this might be a personal thing as well, I've seen this new kind of design with a 2 column. Yes.
I don't know where to look. Or what do you look
remember
for?
a couple of years ago they had boxes?
Boxes, and the colourful boxes and all that. We don't
I
like
think
this.
creatively fantastic looks,
But they say that that's really bad for AI because AI just can't read it.
It reads left to right, computer does, so it's not going to differentiate the different colours.
So you have 2 copies and plain, but then also there's the creative one, straight to the hiring manager.
So, and it's just that shopping list as well.
The skills. We love that, don't we?
Especially when it's just those soft skills, those transferable skills, that really should be more embedded.
Exactly.
They say things like proven team player, excellent communicator. Yeah. Well, how are you communicating? Are you saying something? Are you presenting?
What does that mean? I mean, the recruiter has a different kind of definition of that as well. So I always say, show the proficiency as well. If you can speak different languages, show the proficiency, especially if you're using digital tools as well. So, try and demonstrate that.
Yeah, with hard skill, you say the level and the language or the thing. It is. It's we'll leave it with shopping lists, I think.
Do not do that. No. Okay, I need to go.
Okay, I need to go too then.
Lovely speaking to you, Dill. Once again, thank you very much for your energy and insight.
It's good to have you. Take care.
Bye.
And thank you.